this. Got it. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, Karen, how are you? Nice to see you. Hi, Susan.
You're rolling. You don't need a bathroom trip.
You know, I was sitting there thinking, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Well, it is time if you're going.
All right. Yes.
What's the code again?
1252.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in 2 minutes. 4 o'clock. Yes, 1 week does go by so quick. It's already Thursday. I can't even believe it. All right.
This is Destiny from Success Academy. You are listening to Radio Lex, the voice of the people. WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Lexington, Kentucky.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of Lexington Community Radio or its board of directors. The views expressed are solely those of the programmers.
You are listening to Off the Cuff. Now, here's your host, Adam Banks.
Welcome, everybody, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks, coming at you live from Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you for tuning in to WLXU 93.9 FM. In addition to listening to us on the radio, you can check out our Facebook live stream at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks, or you could stream the show live from the station website at radiolex.us to listen to us from anywhere in the entire world. I am broadcasting from the Deborah Hensley Studios here at Radio Lex on North Limestone. It is September the 26th, 2024. I want to thank everyone for listening and tuning in. I am very excited. As promised, I said that on today's show, I will be bringing on a special guest. It is my first politician of the political season that I will be interviewing today. Jessamine County District 39 Democratic candidate Ryan Stanford will be joining us later on in the show at the 4:30 mark. So that's about the third segment of the show if you are a podcast listener. So I do look forward to that. Ryan is a good friend of mine, and I'm excited just to catch up with him. It's been a while since I've talked to him, just face to face. Been a while since I've seen him, so I'm very excited just to shoot the breeze with him and talk a little bit about his campaign. But look for that at the 4:30 mark of the show, the third segment. Folks, we're about to get smacked with a hurricane. I don't know how bad it's going to affect Kentucky, but Florida hurricane, what is it, Helene? I don't even know how they come up with those names. It will be touching down in Florida this weekend. So, of course, we're going to feel some effects of that. So just be weather aware. Make sure that your windows are rolled up, and make sure you keep a good eye on all of your belongings and your family and anyone traveling this weekend. Just be mindful of the hurricane happening. Last week on the air, there was some national news that broke, and every ticker across the United States have been covering it. And I'm talking about the Letcher County Sheriff that shot and killed the district judge in his own chambers. Now, this happened last Thursday, right before I went on the air. And of course, my family being from Letcher County, Kentucky, because I grew up a lot of my life in Letcher County. I went to kindergarten in Letcher County, first grade in Letcher County. When my parents divorced, we moved to Knott County, so I lived most of my life in Knott County. But I would still say that half of my life as a child was spent in Letcher County due to visitation, with my dad. But nonetheless, I know Letcher County really well. I know Whitesburg really well. So when I was hearing people, some of my family members texting me the news that the district judge in Letcher County was shot by the sheriff of Letcher County, it was shocking and it shook everybody in the community, and it's been on every ticker across the national news. ABC, CBS, NBC, a lot of them opened their newscast last week with that subject. And of course, folks, we're going to have to start the show off talking about such a horrendous event that happened. Letcher County, Kentucky Sheriff Mickey Steins walked into the chambers of District Judge Kevin Mullins, shot and killed him. When I heard that, I was stunned. Immediately, I was thinking, well, what happened? Why? Details are still developing. I've heard rumors. One of the biggest rumors that I heard was that District Judge Kevin Mullins was having some sort of an affair with the sheriff's daughter. I don't know if that's true. You know how rumors like to swirl. I've heard rumors that possibly messing with the man's wife. I don't know. Nonetheless, I wonder how the sheriff feels behind bars, and I just wonder how he feels all these couple of days later from walking into a man's office and taking his life. Post 13 and Hazard received reports around 2:55 p.m. that shots were fired inside the courthouse. Multiple first response agencies arrived at the scene and found District Judge Kevin Mullins, 54 years of age, of Jackhorn, Kentucky, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead on the scene. So that tells me, folks, that he walked into his office, killed him right then on the spot. I don't know how big the chamber was, 6, 8, however many bullets, but he unloaded his gun on the district judge. And the Mountain Eagle, which is a local newspaper in Whitesburg, reported that Steins walked into the judge's outer office and told court employees that he needed to talk to Mullins alone. So I am sure that everybody in the courthouse just assumed, all the workers there, just assumed, hey, the sheriff needs to talk to the judge. What's the big deal? The pair entered into the office talking about the judge and the sheriff, closed the door, and then all of a sudden shots rang out shortly after. Steins then walked out of the room with his hands raised and turned himself over to the police. So many people are wondering, who is Kevin Mullins in Letcher County? He was a district judge in the 47th Judicial District, and he presided over the Letcher County area. He was appointed to that position in 2009 by former Governor Steve Beshear, which is Andy's daddy. According to an archived article in the Mountain Eagle, he was elected to the position the following year. Prior to becoming a judge, he was an assistant Commonwealth attorney in Letcher County starting in 2001. He graduated from UK and attended the University of Louisville and got his law degree from there. Man, my goodness. So he's been in politics in Letcher County since 2009. I didn't know Kevin Mullins personally, but I knew of him. Obviously, being from that area, having family from that area, you always hear these names. I heard of both of the judge and I heard of the sheriff. But who is the sheriff? Mickey Steins. Mickey Steins is from Neon, Kentucky, and lives in a little town called McRoberts, which is an unincorporated community in Letcher County. According to a 2007 article from the Mountain Eagle, Mickey Steins was formerly a bailiff for Letcher County District Court prior to being elected sheriff in 2018. I wonder if he was a bailiff under Kevin Mullins. Could have been. That would make sense as to how the two know each other so well. And Mickey Steins is 44 years old. I'm telling you, that really was a story that shook the community. It was a story that shook the area, and it's a very sad situation. Anytime anybody gets killed, anytime anybody gets murdered for that fact, it's just violence is never the answer. Violence is never the answer. We don't really know what happened in terms of the affair with the wife or the affair with the daughter or what it was. You know, it doesn't mean that you walk into somebody's office and kill them. That's just not the answer. But Mickey Steins, he had his first court appearance just the other day, and everything is still developing. We don't really know his sentence. He's going to have a fair trial. I would say when you kill a judge, when you kill a cop, and you kill a big-time political figure, you're going to get the max. That's just what I'm saying. You're going to get the max. It's not looking good for Mickey Steins. So if he was protecting his daughter, if he was protecting his wife, I can understand the mental behind wanting to protect them, but to kill them, wrong mentality. Because now you're going to have to spend the rest of your life behind bars in a very uncomfortable environment, in a very uncomfortable cell. So you're never really going to be able to be a part of your daughter's life, your wife's life. So I just wonder how he feels today. And we'll have more on that story as it develops. But folks, we have a great show ahead of you today. You are listening to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. Stick with us. We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Daisy Aranda from Bryan Station High School, and you are listening to Radio Lex, the voice of the people. WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Lexington, Kentucky.
Radio Lex only exists in our community because of the generosity of supporting members like Shatella Whitfield. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to the voice of the people. To learn how you can become a supporting member, visit radiolex.us/donate.
Écoutez-moi bien. Nous travaillons beaucoup pour nos familles et venons souvent en aide à notre communauté. Il n'est pas toujours facile de s'intéresser à notre santé. Alors, ce mois-ci, lancez-vous un défi. Allez chez le médecin. Faites examiner votre cœur, vos poumons, votre tension artérielle. Assurez-vous que tous vos vaccins sont à jour. Prenez soin de vous. Agissez. Ce message vous est présenté par Radio Lex, la station de radio communautaire. Pour en savoir plus, consultez radiolex.us.
Radio Lex has the support of Cy Pugh. Thanks, Cy.
Here's a story of a lovely lady.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. On this day, folks, back in 1969 is when the TV sitcom The Brady Bunch, created by Sherwood Schwartz, premiered on ABC in the United States. One of the biggest sitcoms of all time premiered on this day in history. And some say this is one of the most iconic theme songs of all time. We've covered television theme songs on this show before. We talk a lot about television. We've talked about some great sitcom moments throughout time, some of the best theme musics throughout time, and the Brady Bunch is one of the best. I like the version when the kids are singing it the best because they had different renditions of the Brady Bunch song, and I like the Brady Bunch theme song a lot because it told the story of the premise of the show, and I loved when TV sitcoms did that. Gilligan's Island did that. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air did that. It kind of set up the premise of the show whenever the show come on. So by watching the opening credits, you could tell you always got reminded of the premise of the show, and I always appreciated that. And a lot of iconic television shows premiered around this time in history because it is the fall season, one of the biggest times in the television industry. All of the new shows are starting to premiere. So, of course, a lot of iconic television shows are going to have their anniversary around this time, and Brady Bunch being one of them. And folks, today is September the 26th, and not only was it an iconic day for the Brady Bunch on this day in history, but a lot of things have happened on this day in history, September the 26th. For instance, in 1789, on this day in history, Edmund Randolph became the first U.S. Attorney General. There's always got to be a first for any political office. Well, Edmund Randolph was the United States' first Attorney General, and it happened on this day back in 1789. Also, on this day in 1789, Thomas Jefferson was appointed as the first U.S. Secretary of State, and John Jay becomes the first U.S. Chief Justice. So a lot of America, I tell you, during the 1700s, that was the century of our creation as a country. So it makes a lot of sense that some of your biggest political offices in this country were appointed around this time. On this day, September 26th, 1890, United States stops minting $1 and $3 gold coins and 3-cent pieces. So change in general has declined over the last few decades. More and more American citizens are using plastic. More and more I can't tell you the last time I had a full change or a full jar of change. It takes me forever to accumulate enough to even put in my pocket to play with, because change is just not something that we use anymore. Cash is even going away a lot. Remember when everybody had cash on them? Not so much anymore. There's a lot of positives with that. A lot of theft has went down because a lot of people would get mugged, because at any given moment, you could find almost any given person who had at least $200 or $300 on them. Not really the case anymore. But back in the day, folks, we used to have $1 coins, $3 coins. But as things evolved, paper money got bigger, coins started going away, and the U.S. finally stopped making the $1, $3, and 3-cent pieces on this day in 1890. On this day in history, September the 26th, 1949, groundbreaking ceremony for the Hollywood sign was held in Hollywood in Los Angeles, California. The old Hollywood sign was tore down because it used to say Hollywoodland. I don't know if you guys know that, but the big famous iconic Hollywood sign that still stands today used to have an extra word added to the Hollywood sign. It was called Hollywoodland. And on this day in 1949, they had a ceremony because they took away the land and they just called it Hollywood. So the reconstruction of the replacement began on this day, and they replaced it to just say Hollywood, and it still stands today. I think when you're thinking of all the wonders of the world, I think the Hollywood sign should be one of them. It really does take your breath away when you see it for the first time because it is so surreal. You see it on movies, you see it on TV, you see it in pictures and magazines. So when you finally see the sign for the first time with your own naked eye, it really just does something to you. And I would imagine that is kind of what the wonders of the world do. I mean, imagine seeing the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant, or the 9th wonder of the world, China. You would definitely have your eyes full if you've seen any one of those. And I think the Hollywood sign is definitely one of those wonders of the world. It really just, it's surreal when you see it. It just takes your breath away. I was out in Los Angeles back in March, and I've seen the sign before, but I just can't get enough of it. I could eat my breakfast, lunch, and dinner just looking at the sign the entire time. I love the sign. On this day, folks, in history, 1962, the TV comedy series The Beverly Hillbillies premiered on CBS, another iconic television show and another great theme song that told the story of the premise. It must have been one of the things they did back in the 60s. They liked to create theme songs that told the premise of the story. The Beverly Hillbillies did a fantastic job telling the story of the premise of the show, just like Gilligan's Island, just like Brady Bunch. On this day in history, 1992, TV star Roseanne Barr gets a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Roseanne Barr, at one point in time, the biggest name in television, had one of the most iconic shows to ever be on TV, one of the most realistic shows to ever be on TV. Her show was a slice of American life. It depicted divorce, it depicted death, it depicted what it was like to not have kids like the Kennedy kids. It was a real portrayal and a real depiction of lower middle class America, which is the heart of America. And no other sitcom on television ever really depicted that quite like Roseanne did. Now, this other junk that they have on TV today called The Conners, where they tried to keep going with the show without Roseanne, and they called it The Conners. Yes, that show has lasted 6 seasons. Yes, it's still on the air. But my God, I really do feel like they kept that show on the air out of spite of Roseanne. Out of spite of Roseanne. Roseanne, she had always been a controversial figure. And when she got fired in 2018, that was a long time coming. They always wanted to fire her, even at her peak in the 90s during the Roseanne run. They wanted to fire her and replace her with John Goodman and Laurie Metcalf. They wanted them to take over the show. But Roseanne was just so powerful because the ratings were through the roof. They let a lot of things slide. Now, flash forward 20 years later, 30 years later, things are so sensitive, things are so different now. You cannot say anything regardless of your profession, comic or not. You got to watch what you say. They canceled Roseanne, the TV show. They canceled Roseanne, the person. And you don't hear much from her anymore. But it was on this day in 1992 that Roseanne Barr did get her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. On this day in history, folks, September 26th, 2006, Martin Scorsese's The Departed, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, and Mark Wahlberg, premiered in the United States. Now, I bring it up because that was a movie that won the Oscar for Best Picture in 2007. One of the best gangster movies out there. On this day in history, 2017, the video game Fortnite is released, eventually becoming one of the most popular games worldwide. And I can vouch for that. I lived through that, where all of my friends were getting addicted to Fortnite. It was a free game, which is one of the reasons I think it was very popular and a lot of people liked it, was it was free. But it was a free video game that you could download and play, and my God, did people play it. It really did catch on, and it was a fad for a long, long time. And then finally, on this day in history, 2023, Donald Trump was found guilty of fraud by inflating his assets in a civil case which was brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. And that, folks, is all of the things that happened on this day in history, September 26th. And you know, I was talking about all these iconic television shows that premiered around this time, and I talked about how most of them had theme songs describing the premise, and I brought up Gilligan's Island being one of them. I didn't even mention this. Funny enough, on this day in history, 1964, is when the TV sitcom Gilligan's Island debuted on CBS. Man, they don't make iconic TV shows, sitcoms, I should say, like they do anymore. But that, folks, is all of the things that happened on this day in history, September the 26th. And today's national holiday is National Love Note Day. When is the last time you actually wrote a love note to somebody? Love Note Day is celebrated on September 26th every year, and it is the one day where you get to channel your inner Victorian lover and send a warm, heartfelt love note to your partner. It is a chance to convey your deepest emotions by writing down how much they mean to you and so forth. So, love notes used to be just a thing of passion. I really do think there was a lot of passion behind a love note. So much more than a text. I remember being in elementary school and middle school. You would have to pass notes to your friends. You would have to pass notes to the girl that you liked. because that was the only form of communication. If you had a crush on somebody, you wrote her a note, you wrote her a love letter. And then at the end of the love letter, you always asked her if she wanted to be your girlfriend. And then you gave her some options. You gave her 3 boxes. Check yes, no, or maybe. Yes, I always put the maybe box because I wasn't a big fan of rejection. So the maybe box was definitely included in there for me. But National Love Note Day is today. The first love note was mentioned back 5,000 years ago, and it was the oldest love letter ever exchanged, and it was between a princess and a king in a place called Bhagavata Purana. And that was the first ever invention of a love note. In the 18th century, instead of the artificially of formal love letters, the Romantics believed that they should be genuine and written from the heart. In the 20th century, love letters became an important medium of communication between lovers separated by war. Yes, that's when love letters really started to take storm. A lot of people wanted to write love letters to their lover who was overseas or who was over fighting a war. Really, love letter writing picked up during wartime because people's kids were off to war. People's partners were off to war. So many love letters were written. It's fascinating when you can find old people's love letters. And there are a few love letters that I have stored, stashed away somewhere that I have never went through in a long time. Well, I say I've never went through them, but I have. When I moved into my new home just 3 years ago, I was going through boxes and I found a box of old love letters that were written to me. And I was reading through those love letters and I was sitting there thinking, my goodness, people, it's a shame that people don't write these anymore. The passion that was behind some of these people's words, the passion that some people had when they wrote me these love letters were just unlike anything that you read today. Yeah, you can send somebody a nice little text, or you can, do all these over-the-top things when you ask people to prom or homecoming. But man, there is something about an old-fashioned love letter that just did the trick. Don't even get me started on making somebody a burnt mixed CD. Some Love Note Day activities that you could do to celebrate Love Note Day is you could handwrite a note to your lover. You could send them a card and write in it, or you can just make them a playlist like I talked about. Here are some facts about love letters. In the past, paper was very expensive, so people would fold their letters and use wax instead of envelopes to save money. Another fact is the British Army Postal Service delivered around 2 billion letters between soldiers and their families during the First World War. In 1952, the record for the longest letter was taken by a woman who used 3,200 feet of narrow tape to write to her boyfriend serving in Korea. If you took that long to write me a love letter from Korea and have it sent over to me successfully, you're a keeper. Another fun fact about love letters is research claims that writing love letters raises your serotonin levels, which makes you happy. So you get some good feel chemicals in your brain if you just write a love letter. And a love letter can even be written in the form of a sonnet. So you could, if you're not sure of what to say, just express your love in sonnet form. Express your love in sonnet form. That's what I would do. But that, folks, is some fun facts about National Love Letter Day. Man, I miss the simple times. There's still something special about getting love letters, especially today, because you don't see them anymore. And I'm telling you, young listeners, if you're young and you're under the age of 25 and you're listening to me right now and you really want to impress your girl or you really want to impress your guy, write them a love letter. It will totally throw them for a loop. It will totally throw them for a loop, but it's something that they can always keep, and it's something that don't really happen nowadays, so it makes it even more special. So there you go. Happy National Love Note day. All right, folks, we still got lots more Off the Cuff with Adam Banks coming at you live after these words. We are just moments away of speaking to Jessamine County District 39 candidate Ryan Stanford, and he will be coming up in the third segment. So, folks, stick with us. We will be right back.
You listen to 93.9 WLXU LP FM, Radio Lex, the voice of the people.
WLXU 93.9 LPFM broadcasts live 24/7 from the Deborah Hensley studio inside the Gray Line station. Deborah Hensley, State Farm agent. DeborahHensley.com.
What up, everybody? This is Deacon the Villain representing Cunning Linguists and the Off Days. Right now, I'm thrilled to be celebrating 50 years of hip-hop with my man Joey Truex on The Best Part, Hip Hop 101. If you're in the Lexington area, tune in every Friday, 6 p.m. and midnight, 93.9 FM Lexington, or listen worldwide on radiolex.us. Happy Solar Return, hip-hop. Let's keep the music alive.
Have you been drinking? If so, you shouldn't be behind the wheel. Adults metabolize alcohol at a rate of 1 drink per hour. If you've been drinking, your judgment is impaired whether you realize it or not. Only time will sober you up. Cold showers and coffee don't do the trick. Every 2 minutes, a person is injured in a drunk driving crash. Drunk drivers account for 10% of all fatal crashes during the day and 30% of all fatal crashes at night. Hi, this is Doug Gleason with State Farm, reminding you to be a good neighbor and to find a designated driver if you've been drinking.
Radio Lex only exists in our community because of the generosity of supporting members like Nathan Johnson. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to the voice of the people. To learn how you can become a supporting member, visit radiolex.us/donate.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. And as promised at the top of the show, folks, we are going to be joined by Jessamine County District 39 candidate Ryan Stanford. Ryan Stanford grew up in the Lexington-Nicholasville area before attending Bluegrass Community and Technical College. He attended Mill Creek Elementary, Tates Creek Middle School, and East Jessamine High School. He started his work life bagging groceries in car sales and for the last decade in commercial pest control. He says he is very familiar with putting in a hard day's work, and it certainly sounds like it. When he is not working, he spends as much time as possible with his 2 daughters, Emery, age 12, and Audrey, age 2. Ryan says watching things in Frankfort over the last few years made him think that they could use more teamwork and sportsmanship. So I'm very excited to talk to our next candidate, folks, and you are going to be listening to him too right after we take Off the Cuff's Song of the Week, and that's going to be Bon Jovi, Livin' on a Prayer. And when we come back, we will be joined by Jessamine County District 39 candidate Ryan Stanford. Enjoy the song. We'll be right back.
slip up or something.
This is your seat right here. Oh, and just full disclosure, we're on Facebook Live.
Okay.
Right.
Oh yeah, I've been watching it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm going, go Adam.
Yeah, dude. But yeah.
I have a love letter after this.
Yeah, dude. I'm telling you, don't you think that would be like so cool to receive one this time?
Oh yeah.
Because
it's a different ballgame.
It's a different ballgame, and like people would really think, oh, like what a poet he is or she is if they get a letter from somebody, because it's just so unique.
Well, it just has a personal touch to it.
It does.
And like text, like half the time when I read text, I think people are mad at me. You know, like
Oh, I know it.
I feel like when I send text, like it's like I get it. Like maybe my grammar and my punctuation, everything's not the best sometimes, but it's like, yeah, I feel like when I put stuff out there, sometimes it's received not the way I intended. And with the love letter, I mean, like, there was always, there's going to be some personal touch to it. You'll have hearts and just whatever on it. So it's like, I have like a full box at the house of stuff that, you know, from when I was a kid and stuff. So, yeah, man, some things you hold on to just to remind you of.
That's what I'm saying.
Simpler times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I have love letters still yet. I would never tell who they're from on the air, but I said I have love letters still yet, but I don't want to tell them who they're from. But I was reading through some of them, and I was like, dude, why didn't I give this girl a chance? Like, she was like pouring her heart out, and like, but I guess that's just what everybody did back then. So if you go through and you read through any love letter, it's going to be so, I don't know, it's going to be so meaningful. All right, so those are your headphones. You adjust the volume. You can go as loud as you want. You can go as low as you want. But I'm leaving that up to you because I blast mine out.
Okay.
Because I like it loud.
Okay.
Now, the mic won't work until I turn you on because we're not on the air right now. But yeah, man, that's it. We're going to start off just, you know me, got to start off talking about, we'll talk about the football game, talk a little bit about Stoops, talk a little bit about Pope. So
that sounds good to me. And that'll probably be good for my nerves and everything. Just kind of ease me on in there.
Yeah, man.
With everything, you just kind of overthink it. You just, you know, I'd say campaigning, it's been humbling at times. It makes you, at times you feel isolated and feel like you're on an island. And then there's other times where you're just like, all right, like you just kind of second guess yourself on a lot of stuff. You're like, you know, did I say that? Did I articulate that in the way I wanted to come across and things like that? And, you know, there's a lot to it sometimes.
Oh, man. I mean, doing what you're doing, like watching you, dude, it's just so impressive, you know, and it's just so cool to actually see one of us out there doing public service like you. I think it's great.
Man,
and it's a lot to put yourself out there like that.
It's crazy. I remember us watching that movie with Sandra Bullock forever ago and us talking about it maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if you remember that. No.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
Political consultant.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. And as promised, I am now joined by Jessamine County District 39 candidate Ryan Stanford. Ryan, thank you so much for being here, my friend. It's been a while since you and I have seen each other. I was sitting here thinking, when was the last time me and you seen each other face to face?
It had to have been during like one of those all-star challenges over there at Jordan's house or something like that.
Yeah, because we're in a basketball league together, fantasy. We're in a football fantasy league together. So we used to get up with each other a lot and see each other. But man, the way people's schedule is now and then, it's just hard to get together like we used to. You've certainly been busy. Are you when you're not campaigning and you're just like hanging out, relaxing, what do you do to kind of just lay low and chill and just relieve all your stress?
Well, I tell you, there's not much chill time these days. Many of my days are spent, if we're not out campaigning, then I'm on a soccer sideline. You know, I help coach with the high school team, the middle school team. I help coach a club soccer team, as well as my youngest daughter's U4 soccer team, which I don't know if it's even soccer at this point, but it looks like there's balls involved. So as long as they get snacks, we're good to go. But I don't know if there's much chill time right now, to be honest with you. It is going, and at times it's stressful. But the way my mind works at this point, I'd almost rather stay busy. And let's just keep cracking at it. And I don't want to feel like there's any stones that we haven't turned over and any doors that we haven't knocked, or at least put a piece of lit in their door or something like that. So So yeah, a lot of time was going into the campaign, but the rest of the time was trying to be a decent dad still at the end of the day, because it does take up a lot of time.
You know, I was sitting here thinking of when the first time I met you, because I've known you for a long time.
Yes, sir.
It's 2024. I want to say I met you around 2013-ish, 14-ish. I remember one of the first times I ever seen you. I'm going to tell you my side, my point of view.
Okay.
So I remember walking into, we were at Zach's house. He was having a barbecue. And I remember we were all like filling our oats, 24, 23, 25 years old. Everybody was off to the side drinking, whatever, having fun. And then I look over and I see you, who I don't remember ever meeting you before this. I see you with a little baby. And I see you playing with this baby, and I remember asking another guy that was there, I said, who's that baby that Ryan is with? And they're like, that's his daughter. And I was like, oh, it just kind of took me off guard because you were so young and you were so good with the baby. And I've watched you just evolve over the years as a father, man, just on following you on Facebook. You're so good at just being a dad. You can just tell you enjoy it. What was that like, man, being a single dad at such a young age, raising a daughter?
Humbling, to say the least. You know, the moment I found out I was having a daughter, things just kind of clicked. And I would go back and whip my own butt 15 times over again for the way I acted and the way I was before I had a daughter. And it just, having a kid puts things in perspective for you that, you know, I was 19, 20 years old at the time. So my friends, I was probably one of the younger ones in the bunch, but a lot of my friends were getting to a point where they were starting to go out. We just hit 21 there, so they're going to bars and things like that. And my weekends, you know, I had to work to keep the lights on. So a lot of my weekends, you know, we had a 4-3 custody split. So I had 4 days one week, 3 days the next week, and a lot of it geared up around my days off because I wanted to maximize my time with my kid, which happened to be on weekends. So when my friends were going out and drinking and hanging out and doing typical, you know, 21, 22-year-old stuff, I was at home with a baby. And, you know, I don't regret any of that. You know, for me, it kept me from getting in trouble. It kept me from, you know, I'm still able to experience life and still was able to experience life. But it was just, you know, everything in our life happens for a reason. The good, the bad, the ugly. And at 20 years old, getting that call and finding out, you know, you have a kid on the way, it's like...
life's over, you think?
Temporarily you think that, but then you start to go to these appointments and you see the ultrasounds and things like that, and you're like, that's my baby. And then
I created that.
And then exactly. And then, you know, after she was born, you know, my first daughter Emery, everything went so fast, and she was the best kid. And I knew I was gonna pay for it with my second kid, which she goes 0 to 160 seconds. But she, you know, everything was just so easy with her. And you know, I when I grew up, I didn't have a lot of, you know, it was just a little bit different for me. So, you know, I had some examples of what I didn't want to be and things like that growing up. And for me, I want to be involved. I want to enjoy the moments. And, you know, so whenever I was younger and kind of figuring out life, it's like, instead of going out and buying a big screen TV, it's like, hey, we're going to go and take a trip. Let's go to the beach. Let's go do this. So,
yeah, I see that on Facebook. Like, you'll be surprising her with a beach trip. She never went to the beach before, and you took her to the beach. And I was like, man, Ryan is such a good dad. You recently had a second kid, 2 years ago, right? Yes, yeah, so, man, that's awesome. And I just love that you're so involved now. You help coach. You mentioned her soccer team.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's just so good to see that involvement. You can tell she really thinks a lot of you, and the fact that she's seen you do this, you know she's got to be proud of you. Do you guys go to many UK football, basketball games?
She's been to a few different games. We go to, usually when it's me and my daughter, we go to soccer games. So the men a few years ago had a really good team and put together a few good seasons. And the women this year are doing really well. So we haven't been to anything this year, but we always did some other team bonding event. I took the whole team and we went. We had one opportunity where we got to walk on the field with the girls and things like that, which was awesome. But most of the time, we've been to everything. She's been to NBA games. She's been to an NFL game. She's been to baseball games. We've been to baseball games in Pittsburgh. So she's done a lot of different stuff, way more than I did at her age, at least my oldest daughter. But But yeah, we don't go to too many UK football games, but that is something I do enjoy going to.
Yes, we've been to a couple ball games ourselves. We went to Cincinnati Reds. Are you still on the Reds train or not so much?
Always. They make it a little tougher to keep up some years than others. And this year has been like we would come out and we would go 7-3 in your last 10, and then we would hit a 3-7 stretch, and it was like we could never play above 500. And we have some really nice young pieces there, and I look forward to seeing as they continue to get better and things. But I do think we need to change, just a different voice, as a manager.
Well, David Bell, I don't know if you heard, just recently got knocked off the team. They fired him.
Oh, wow. So I'm way behind on that.
They fired him. See, you're so busy, you didn't even hear about David Bell getting fired. Yes, they're looking for a new manager.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I don't necessarily know if David Bell was the problem, because to me, I don't think in-game management, now I'm not going to be somebody that claims to know a lot about baseball and in-game management, but I just felt like that the pieces were, it wasn't David Bell. I don't feel like that it was his problem, but that's just one opinion. Is there a manager that you would like to see the Reds get? Is there a name out there that you would be like, I would love to see him come to the Reds?
Nothing in it. Nobody in mind, to be honest with you. When I think of managers, I always get hit with the old names like Lou Piniella and things like that, guys that are long gone from the game. But I want to see somebody coming in like David Bell had really good energy. I think he's been thrown out of more games over the last few years than any other manager. But
I love that too.
I like that fire energy, but I want to see it across the board, not just whenever you're arguing balls and strikes and things like that out there, but across the board. And so I think, one of the things we messed up on about a decade ago is we gave up on Dusty Baker maybe a year or two too early when we still had a window to win. And so, I think if you're going to keep a coach like David Bell around, you needed a guy or two like a Joey Votto or something like that still in that clubhouse. Just somebody that's going to come in there and just command respect right out of the gate. With a lot of young guys, you have to grab that thing by the horns.
And sometimes a new voice is sometimes all a team needs. UK certainly knows a thing or two about a new voice. We just replaced John Calipari with Mark Pope. I was a big Cal guy. I thought Cal was amazing. There were some things that frustrated me about Cal. The biggest thing that frustrated me about Cal was his priority on NBA. That was his main priority, was getting players the big $1 million contracts. Pope is now, he's got a new philosophy. I don't know if you read where he even removed the NBA banner.
I did see that. That's awesome.
I thought that was awesome too. I was like, yes, because the reasoning behind removing that banner was because Pope said that our main focus as Kentucky players needs to be hanging banners. So I do like his philosophy a lot better than Cal. How do you feel about Mark Pope being the new man in charge? Because a lot of people want to say, oh, he's from the 96 championship team. People, you got to remember, folks, it wasn't Mark Pope that coached us to the 96 championship. It was Pitino. But what's your thoughts on the new man in charge in Lexington?
Well, I really like Mark Pope. He has came in with that type of energy that I want to see the Reds come. Just come in and grab this thing by the horns. Like, a lot of people initially, that initial response is like, is he ready for this yet? What has he done at BYU? Blah, blah, blah. We were looking for that big splash hire because it's Kentucky. It's the mecca of college basketball. But Mark Pope, I think Barnhart is yearned for somebody, like he wanted somebody that had connections to the program directly. Not another outsider or anything like that. Not somebody that was going to make it about themselves like Cal ultimately did. But somebody that's going to make it about the name on the front of the jersey. And that's what Mark Pope's doing. And I respect Calipari and everything he did for our program. I'm not one of these people that really jumped on his back the last few years, but maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I did kind of start highlighting that it just didn't feel like Kentucky basketball anymore. I was used to growing up and falling in love with a kid and watching him develop over 2, 3, 4 years. Mm-hmm. And growing up, outside of maybe Azubuike and Randolph Morris and a handful of these guys that left after 2 or 3 years, most guys we got to see for 4 years, and you respected the fact that they went in there and they grinded out, no matter whether they had 5 minutes their freshman year or they played 20 minutes or whatever. But like I said, you got to watch these kids grow up in front of you, and especially some of these local kids. And over the last 10 years, we didn't get that anymore. And how much did people really enjoy watching Reed Shepherd play last year and locking onto him? And so we didn't really have that film for a long time. We got a taste of it last year, and I think we'll get a lot more of that moving forward with Mark Pope at the helm.
All right. Well, I could talk sports with you all day, but unfortunately, we got this little campaign that we got to get to, running for State Representative District 39 in Jessamine County. Ryan, I want you to just start off by talking about what it was like for you growing up in Jessamine County, because you kind of grew up a little bit in Jessamine County, a little bit in Lexington, but a big part of your life was growing up in Jessamine County. Talk about what it was like growing up there.
Yes, sir. So, I moved out to Jessamine County in 2003, so towards the end of my 8th grade year, and I finished out my 8th grade year at Tates Creek Middle School here in Lexington. And when I went out to Jessamine County, it's when you try to transition and mesh with kids that are a little bit older, so at that high school level, it's a little bit tougher. So my first year, my freshman year, it was tough, just because you're going in there, you're trying to break into these friendship circles that have been established for 4, 5, 6 years since grade school. And so it is a little bit tougher to do that. But I was fortunate enough to have, some really awesome coaches, some really great teachers, some really good mentors that kept me on track, kept me focused. And, I've always been this kind of outgoing personality. I get nervous about everything these days, but I've always kind of been like...
Oh, you have definitely been.
But so I was able to kind of be a class clown and kind of come out a little bit. But yeah, it was... initially it was tough, but what I've learned, and I think as we're younger, we're like, oh, I want to move away, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I have moved away a few times as an adult, but I always ended up right back in Jessamine County. And when I had a kid, and she started to get to a school level age, I knew I wanted to be back in Jessamine County. I wanted her to go to schools there and things like that. And so Jessamine County is it's big enough to where there's stuff to do. It's close enough to Lexington where I'm not too far out from that. But it still has that hometown feel to it. And, Jessamine County is full of a lot of hard-working people. And it fits the bill for me. I'm in here in my work uniform right now. My work truck's parked out on the street. Hopefully it doesn't get towed out of here. But, it just lines up with who I am and a lot of my values and who I believe in and where I want to raise my kids and establish my family at. And that's where we're at.
You obviously care about your hometown. Why is it that you decided at this point in your life that you needed to put yourself out there and run for state representative?
Well, I think what we see is every election cycle, I feel like most people feel like there's a bigger disconnect between themselves and Frankfort or themselves and Washington each cycle. And it doesn't, whether you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't feel like they're working for us anymore. And, I tell people it's not really... the middle class is gone. So essentially you have the working class, then you have whatever you want to call it, the elite, the establishment, whatever else. And I feel like the working class is so blended now, but it's like we're divided amongst silly stuff. Politics shouldn't divide us. People talk all the time about other countries getting bold. So the issues that are going on with Russia and Ukraine, or what's going on with China, potentially in Taiwan, or China and India, or what's going on with Israel and God. So it's like we talk about all the conflict that's going on in the world and we say, well, it's because of weak leadership here, this or that, blah, blah, blah. No, the reality is that other countries are being emboldened, or other countries are being more aggressive because of how divided we are here. We have talking heads getting on TV and talking about civil wars here in our country. So if you're another superpower, you're another country that has any aspirations of gaining more land or doing whatever, now's the time whenever, the U.S. is sitting here and we're divided amongst over some of the silliest stuff. So I think for me, things started to hit closer and closer to home. So we look at, whether it's workers' rights, talking about taking away overtime pay or lunch breaks or paid drive time, things like that, it all affects me directly. And we get so consumed sometimes by national politics that we ignore local politics, and we don't realize that affects the roads we drive on every day, the healthcare opportunities we have, the education opportunities that our kids or grandkids are going to have. And so I decided, like, hey, it's time to put up or shut up. And I felt like as a state representative, I could bring transparency to Frankfort and the people in my district. I have a big portion of Nicholsville and parts of Lexington, so like southeast Fayette County. But I just feel like I could bring that transparency that we're missing right now.
You're out on the campaign trail, and talk a little bit about what that's been like. What are you doing? Are you going door to door, or seeing people face to face? Are you having public forums? Do you plan on, or have you met your opponent yet? And do you plan on doing a debate, or would you be willing to do a debate if you wanted?
I would definitely be willing to do a debate if you wanted to. We actually just, the Kentucky League of Women Voters just came out and said that only one Republican accepted their invite to come out to their forums. Wow. So it's, I get that some candidates probably feel like maybe the questioning or some of that stuff could be a little skewed, but I would welcome any forum. As far as our campaign goes, we have been working door to door. One of my initial focuses was going out and meeting people where they're at. So going to our local festivals, going to our local music events, and just seeing people where they're at and trying to form an organic relationship, not showing up and trying to take over it and make it about me, but showing up and saying, hey, I am Ryan Stanford, I'm here to support you in what you're doing, and having conversations. And we feel like because of that, we have really started to bridge the gap in this area. Democrats lost by 22 points in 2020 and 19 points in 22, just so to say that we had a lot of work to do would be an understatement. But I feel like because of our ties to the community, because of the work we're putting in out there, that we are bridging that gap. We've made this thing pretty close. So yes, sir. And I have met him once. I actually went and introduced myself. I served some meals for the Jessamine County Homeless Coalition for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I think he found out we were at the Thanksgiving one because he showed up at the Christmas one to shake some hands. And when I was done serving, I went over there and introduced myself and said hi to him. So outside of that, I haven't talked to him or said anything else.
Well, we are live, and a lot of the Lexington community and Jessamine community are listening to the station now, so I am sure they want to know where you stand on certain issues. As a state rep, if elected, you will be one of the votes. You will be making big, important political decisions, so I just want to run through these really quick, and for the sake of time, we'll really have to keep our answers brief.
Yes, sir.
But let's start with the big one here, abortion. Roe versus Wade was overturned in Kentucky, which essentially made abortion illegal in Kentucky. Where do you stand in terms of abortion rights?
We should definitely have exceptions in Kentucky. So whether it be rape or incest, when you heard Hadley Duval's story last year during the gubernatorial election, that really hit home because it put a face with it. It wasn't just people saying, well, oh, what about the case of this girl or this or that, but it would put a case on a 12-year-old girl that, was single, and had to deal with all that and the trauma that comes with that. So, for me, I think, what was scary about 22 is that we had the option to vote for that. And so I know in my case, I voted no on 2 and 22, and that was to keep the state constitution the way it was, not make any amendment or not change anything, and to protect women's right to an abortion. And nobody wants an abortion. I hate saying that, that it's an ugly term. Me as a father, I never considered having an abortion. Like, it was like, oh, we're having a baby? Okay, let's figure this thing out. I got a second job, boom, boom, boom. But there's different circumstances for different people. And so women should have the opportunity to make decisions. I don't think any healthcare decision should be forced upon people across the board, period. And in this case, definitely not. And so, like I said, what was scary about this is that we voted no on 2 years ago. That won statewide. And despite it winning, they still changed the Constitution. So why did we even vote?
Right. Amendment 2, and folks, for those listening at home, Kentucky Constitutional Amendment 2 will allow state funding for non-public education, and it's on the ballot in Kentucky on November 5th, this next election. If you vote yes, a yes vote supports amending the Constitution to enable the General Assembly to provide state funding to students outside of public schools. If you vote no, a no vote opposes amending the Constitution to enable the General Assembly to provide state funding to students outside of public schools. So my question to you, Ryan, is how do you feel about Amendment 2? Would you vote yes or no, and why?
I vote no. All day, every day, twice on Sunday. That is a terrible amendment. And the reality is that we are already struggling here with educational resources and things like that here in the state. And we finally have this rainy day fund and an opportunity to put more resources into education and to pay our teachers a living wage. We're 42nd in starting pay, 45th in median pay nationally when it comes to teacher salaries. So not only do we need to pay our teachers, but we need to put money into our schools, period. There should be no reason why a teacher should have to go out and buy our own resources to teach our kids and things like that. And so I think if we do that, we'll start to see, a lot of people's argument against public schools is that it's cookie cutter, it's this and that. Well, if we give more resources to our school and allow them to hire people that can focus on specific needs and things like that, then we can have tailor-made solutions for kids that don't fit within that normal spectrum, or not normal, but that typical spectrum. And so I just think that, public schools or public funding belongs in public schools, period. When we've, as a taxpayer, I'm concerned where my tax dollars would go if we did open up Pandora's box on this thing. We learned, whether it was the flooding in Eastern Kentucky or the tornadoes that hit Western Kentucky, that public schools become community centers. So it's more than just teaching our kids. And the reality is I don't think there's any coincidence that in our legislature, in the General Assembly this year, they try to pass through legislation that would loosen child labor laws in the same year that they're putting a ballot initiative up here. Because what's going to happen to some of these kids in rural areas is that if they can't get into a private school and the public school doesn't have enough funding to stay open, those kids are going back to work. And that's a reality. That's a harsh reality for some people in Kentucky. So I think we just need to think this thing all the way through. And I think if you think it all the way through, you're going to realize that it's not a good idea. It doesn't work here. Maybe if we had a city the size of New York City or Chicago or something like that, you could justify in that particular area. But here, no need for that.
Well, for the sake of time, we're up to your closing remarks. So we're going to end it with one more question, Ryan. What kinds of things do you want to see happen while you are in office, and what kinds of things do you want to push forward if elected state representative?
I want to see transparency come back to Frankfort. They actually try to pass through legislation that would remove some of that transparency, but I want to see transparency come back. I want to protect rights that we have fought for decades, for centuries, whether it's women's rights, whether it's civil rights, whether it's workers' rights. We've already had those fights. We've already had those debates. Why are we doing it again? What we're seeing at this point is regression. And I want to bridge that gap. I want people to be proud of who we're sending to Frankfort again. And I want people to feel like they have a say in the matter again. Like I said, I don't feel like, especially as a Democrat in that area, I definitely don't feel like I have any voice in my area. And I feel like even if I sat down and talked to my opponent or the incumbent there, that they wouldn't really listen to understand. It would just be listen to respond, and that's part of our issue. So I want to see compromise again. I want to see conversations that we're not having. I want to see transparency.
Well, Ryan, we're going to have to do a part 2.
Oh, for sure, man.
I want to thank you for being here.
Yes,
it's been awesome. It's great to see you. Election day is November 5th.
Yes, sir.
Go to the post votes. It is your duty, not necessarily your right. It's your duty. This has been Adam Banks with Off the Cuff. We'll see you next Thursday.
Hi, I'm Lily Rochelle. This is Radio Lex.
We're off.